some of the reasons I've run for office before. I was actually born in Anchorage, Elmendorf Air Force Base, and I was able to get back here. And I've lived in the Valley the last 11 years. I lived in Anchorage when I was little, and in Southeast Alaska for about a year when I taught school. So that's just a little bit about me. The reason why I'm running is I've been concerned for a while about the budget, and now I guess I'm more concerned as well about the binding caucus, because that seems to be how the budget is put forward, based on selling your vote ahead for 2 years. Basically, what I wanted to address on the budget was, if you look at it, one of the bills that I put first in would be against this, Senate Bill 26. SB 26, the first bill that I put forth is to repeal SB 26, and the reason being is because it changes our earnings, goes from an earnings to a percent of market value, which the percent of market value is really a bad deal, because when you put it into the terms of a budget, basically what it does is it restricts earnings. So essentially, if the fund has been earning 10%, now you're down to 5%. So if you're restricting yourself to 5% of the earnings, the overall earnings of the account, yeah, you're going to grow the earnings, the overall account. So what are we now, $67 billion. So that's going to continue to grow. Last year it grew $6 billion. So that's one thing that I would address. The second one is the binding caucus. It's a bad deal. I wouldn't sign up for the binding caucus, because what it does, this particular binding caucuses are okay, but binding caucuses limit you on your vote and for procedural and budget type items. And as we've seen over time, for example, my opponent, he's voted every time on every budget that we've had. So that tells me that he's not for capping spending. And capping spending is a very important thing in today's budgeting. When I was in the military, the last 4 years I spent on the largest unit on the base, working on C-17s and E-3s, and I had one of the largest budgets that I had to balance, and they were cutting our budget left and right. So the problem with the budget is it's the operating budget. The operating budget is what's out of control. If you look at the operating budget, you have 72%, I believe, this year, of the operating budget is health and social services and Medicaid. So I see that as a problem, and I'll address a little bit about why it is a problem here in a second. But when you have 70% of your budget based on a prior governor's expansion of Medicaid services, and these services that were expanded are optional services. You have folks coming out from out of state that are doing medical tourism and stuff like this. They're only here for a short time to get residence, get a procedure, and leave. And the big problem I have with health and social services, the division of healthcare services right now, is with Medicaid. We have nearly 40% of the Medicaid clients are Alaska Natives, and have an equal amount of program expenditures are made on their behalf. So why is this a concern? Well, because Medicaid's in the budget, it's in the operating budget, it's now costing us our dividend. So do you really want your dividend to go to Medicaid services? To the actual reasoning here says maximizing the reimbursements available to tribal providers, and that's off the Division of Health and Social Service website. So what they're doing is they're maximizing the benefits for the providers, not for the people of Alaska. So I see that as a big concern. So that would be the reason that I would be for capping the budget. So, and the reason there is for the benefit of the providers. Well, if you look at the providers, all it's doing is allowing them to get their money faster. Because if you go through Medicaid, you're going to get your services, you're going to get reimbursed faster. But if you go through the federal government, which all these Native services, they're available to the federal government. So if you ask folks, do you want to give up your dividend, or have the providers wait a little bit to get their money? So I think it's a big problem that we have right now. It seems that if you are interested in re-electing my opponent, then you're also interested in re-electing Kathy Giessel, because pretty much Kathy Giessel has been your representative the last couple of years. So that's my concern. The budget growing too big, and all the things that are associated with the budget. and not looking at the operating budget as is an important idea that we need to take into mind as we move forward as legislatures. Thank you.